Despite not receiving a yes vote from Senate President Leroy Garcia, the red flag bill passed the state Senate this week, now heading to the House with amendments. The contentious bill has inspired about half of Colorado counties and many sheriff's offices to pledge to refuse enforcement of the proposal if it becomes law. The Denver and Aurora police unions also opposed the bill this week. Patty, we've been talking about this bill for a while. Leroy Garcia gets the chance, Senate President Leroy Garcia gets the chance to vote no on this because Senate Democrats had enough even without his vote. I guess if there's going to be a lot of furor about this, does he still escape it, even though he was the gatekeeper of the state Senate, which past gatekeepers have been able to get rid of bills they didn't want to see?
People are going to be taking aim at him from both sides because of what he did. You know, it's 2013 all over again. You're seeing the recall issues. You're seeing the secession issues. Over half the counties now have come out against this red flag bill. You've got AG Phil Weiser saying if sheriffs aren't going to enforce it, they're going to have to resign. And you see Douglas County, where this really initiated with poor Sheriff Tony Spurlock, who came out with the very, very best intentions because of a tragedy that happened that this law might have been able to stop. He now is at odds with his commissioners. And ironically, Douglas County was just named the healthiest community in the country. Maybe for healthy discussion, but not for anything else right now.
David, you're an expert on a variety of issues, but especially something like this with the Second Amendment. How bad is this bill? And the reason not opinion-wise, but I guess when it comes to legal challenges, because if it has gone through the Senate, assuming that the House approves the amendments and Governor Polis signs it, do you feel this is headed for a lot of contentious lawsuits?
Yeah, well, there will certainly, El Paso County has already announced it's going to sue. Now, there are a lot of challenges, including whether the county commissioners themselves have standing or not, and lots of complications beyond that. But certainly taking away the right of, eliminating the right of cross-examination in a civil case is one constitutional issue. And then something that seems to run straight into against U.S. Supreme Court precedent, which says you can't create a class of cases where you automatically allow no-knock raids, like one state had done for drugs. Supreme Court said you can't do that as a class, and this bill seems to allow no-knocks as a class in all this, for any of these orders, rather than having the normal protections in Colorado law where you have to have the district attorney approve a no-knock search warrant and then go to a court to get approval for that. You know, that's part of why as far as I can recall, the Denver and Aurora police unions have never ever taken a stance, pro or con, on a gun bill. And I think what's coming out from their point of view and also from the sheriffs and the county commissioners is in my view, the bill is a good idea, and for the reasons Sheriff Spurlock talks about, but how the details of it are really dangerous. You can literally have a situation where somebody makes a phone call, never even appears in court, and that triggers an automatic requirement by law enforcement to go out, show up at somebody's house with no notice and confiscate their guns. Even though we know from other states a third of these initial confiscation orders are issued erroneously. It creates a volatile situation of danger for law enforcement and the public, and that's part of the widespread resistance you're seeing among law enforcement.
Ben, for the first part of the counties coming out that they're going to be against this, you saw, I think, some of the standard rural versus urban argument that we see almost every state legislative session for the last few years. But with the Denver and Aurora police unions come into play, that changes a little bit. Now it's kind of a law enforcement thing, and with Tony Spurlock, you have some kind of law enforcement versus law enforcement. But how do the politics play out of this situation?
Well, it's a little more fraught than typical, as everybody's noting. You don't usually see that kind of alignment with rural and urban. I think, what's interesting to think about, David said he couldn't recall another time when unions would come out on a gun issue. I recall in 1999 and 2000, they did come out on the statewide initiative to close the gun show loophole and supported that. And that was something that passed with 73% of the state's support. I think with this issue, I think a few things. I think one, if it were put to a statewide initiative, I think it would pass. I think that the voters of Colorado spoke pretty clearly in the last round of elections and put Democrats in across the line in the legislature and in every statewide office. And this was not some issue that was behind the scenes or under the radar. This was a key issue in our last round of elections, and I think it's pretty clear to me that the legislature is acting on the will of voters, and they're doing what they were being told to do. I think, secondarily, as someone who worked in gun control 20 years ago in the wake of the shootings at Columbine and was an activist nationally and was part of the group that passed the initiative to close the gun show loophole, I think it's lamentable that we're still kind of parsing around and dealing at the edges of these issues. And I think that it's regrettable that we don't have stronger leaders to stand up and really close the gap here. We had an awful atrocity happen in New Zealand, and 4 days later, liberals, conservatives, everybody agreed they're banning semi-automatics and automatic weapons. Done. I don't know that that's a tenable solution in our society, but we can do a lot more than what we're doing. And it's a huge vacuum in leadership, and it's really a clear reflection of how divided our country is and how willing to be partisan people are above what's truly rational and better for the whole, and even better for democracy. So it's a shame.
Brother Jeff, clearly anything associated with guns in Colorado is going to be a contentious issue, but there's something here where I think you're seeing people who want to see a law like this, but you're seeing a lot of folks, law enforcement as part of other groups, coming out about the details. Is there a way to get the good idea passed without some of the details? Are we just going to accept the details? Will those details become lawsuits for the next few years? How do you read the situation as we see it right now?
Well, there'll be lawsuits, and of course that's a part of the process. I have a different concern in terms of the way law enforcement is responding to the legislation. As we talk about this issue, the legislators are wrestling with those details. That's what they do. And then you have the judicial system that will talk about how that is taking place, or if how it should be applied. Now, law enforcement should be enforcing the law. When they say that, okay, well, we don't like this, and as a result, we are going to not enforce, or we're going to use some different tactics to either thwart or decide how we're going to do that, I think they put themselves in a position to be legislators, judges, etc. And I see that being the problem. Something absolutely needs to be done, but I think it needs to be done in a proper order. And I have to agree with Attorney General Phil Weiser. If you feel as though this is something that you do not want to enforce, and that is what you are in position to do, then you absolutely should resign, as opposed to saying, I'm not, or I'm going to tell you what it means, or I'm going to be the legislator.